In 1993, I was a journalist with the Guardian newspapers, and my responsibility was to cover the military, to also cover politics in 1993. Now, let me say that 1993 was a rallying point of progressive elements, reactionary elements, students' movements, labor, with a common goal to end military rule. Because as of 1987, we need to understand the background. As of 1987, the cup of Babangida was full. He had committed so many atrocities. There was the killing of Delegiwa, which up to now nobody has been able to explain, in November 1986. There was also the killing of his best, one of his best friends, Major General Vatsa, that were alleged to have planned a coup. 10 officers, 5 officers were shot dead, in spite of global outreach that they should not be killed, including prayer mounted by Shino Achebe, Wale Adeoye, and all members of the literary community. Then we also had a lot of repression. The Okoba killing, 7 people from the same family, the same father and mother, were wiped off, by policemen. There was also the killing of the Daudu brothers, which took place in Oshodi, that led to a lot of riots all over. There was the killing of 4 students at Ahmadu Bello University in 1986. The policemen went into their hostels, brutalized them, raped them, and then 4 students were killed. Then, even on the realm of economic, affairs, Babangida had collected the IMF loan from the World Bank, which ended up, making more Nigerians to be poor. A lot of industries were, had to leave the country. The industrial sector of the country was attacked. So many people that were involved in production were forced to flee the country. Many companies relocated into Ghana. Many countries relocated into Zambia, leaving Nigeria because of the exchange rate and because of the structural adjustment program put in place by Babangida. And that led to riots in 1989, where over 200 people were massacred on the streets of Lagos, Kaduna, and everywhere. And the Babangida's response was to further, increase his tempo of repression. I remember that the NLC, for instance, was banned. They put in an administrator in place. The National Association of Nigerian Students was banned. Labor movement and also the progressive forces were attacked. The student movement, for the first time, began to see the upsurge in armed cultism. Armed people were coming entering into campuses, attacking students, killing them, kidnapping them. So it was a kind of an atmosphere of fear and trembling. So in 1986, Babangida announced to the whole world that he was going to leave, the stage by 1990. That was in 1986, and that there will be democratic government in place. In 1990, he started talking about extension, that he was no longer ready to hand over power to civilians. So that brought, the progressive forces together, including some reactionary elements who were in the political class. And at that time, there was a military coup led by Gideon Oka as a kind of response, to resolve the national question, which was a major problem at that time. And 45 officers were killed in just one day, without legal representation. They were killed, massacred, and their bodies buried in shallow graves. And then there was a very terrible incident, which happened, I think, in September 1992, where 168 military officers perished. The plane took off in Lagos here, and 3 minutes after, it perished. And I remember I was in the Guardian, that when Babangida and Ahomu were going there to inspect the wreckage, they were laughing. We took the picture at that time and put it on the front page of the Guardian. They were laughing. Those soldiers were left in that plane for several hours. They bled to death. And up till now, nobody has made any attempt to probe that Ejigbo, plane crash. So there were so many things that happened under Babangida's regime that people felt, look, enough is enough. So by 1991, when we came up with a kind of transition program with 2 political parties, Social Democratic Party and National Republican Party, though the Nigerians were saying that those 2 parties made the Nigerians to unite, but national fact, that was not the agenda of Babangida. The agenda was to narrow the choices of Nigerians into only 2 options, designed and perfected by Babangida, the form and content of those political parties were put together by Babangida. So a lot of progressive forces, the Marxist elements, were edged out of the two political parties. So when he now conducted this election, it was clear that Babangida had no intention to hand over. The first transition program contested by people like Falai, General Yaradua, he cancelled it midway, shifting the goalposts in the middle of the game. Then when June 12 election came again, Abiola and Tofa, suddenly, just few hours before the election, he got a contingent saying that the election was going to be counted. But the election went ahead because Professor Wozu stood his ground. But that election was designed ab initio to fail. So when Nigerians now noticed that Babangida was not ready to leave the stage, then a lot of people came together. There were a lot of progressive forces. At that time, our organization was a campaign for democracy, which had labor, students, journalists, and media organizations, NUG, progressive wings of so many organizations, market women, and I think it was a monumental struggle that took place all over the country and eventually brought the military on its knees. Not totally, because when Babangida was leaving in 1993, he said he was stepping aside. He said it on national television, I was stepping aside. That means that they were not ready to hand over. He put in a surrogate, General Sani Abacha, who turned out to be a more vicious leader, who ran a campaign of terror, fear and anxiety, were imposed on Nigerians. And then the resistance continued until eventually that we were able to get Abacha off the way before we now have a democratic transition in 1999.
Thank you very much, sir. On the date of the annulment of the June 12, 1993 election, where were you?
I was one of those media people covering the election. So I was covering Ikeja as is here, the military barracks, because I was supposed to be voting at the military barracks. And then, so I was, moving from one place to the other, monitoring the election, and then trying to take reports which were sent to the media. So what I saw was that Nigerians came out in large numbers. They were so anxious, to edge out the military. Even in the cantonment here, Abiola won. In many military installations, many military barracks, Abiola won the election. In Kano, Abiola won the election. So for the first time, Nigerians united, irrespective of religion, irrespective of ethnicity, behind Abiola, which was not the best of all the progressive elements at that time. But of course, it provided the shade. And Nigerians rallied around because it was the only option, that we can use as a peg to get the military out of power.
Great, sir. There were stories about how endangered pro-democracy activists sneaked into exile through what is known as Nadeko routes. Yeah. Can you tell us about the journey into this exile during this period, sir?
Well, at this time, before 1993, there had been people going into exile. People were either forced into exile, like Dr. Patrick Wilmot of Ahmadu Bello University, like many other people in the academic community were compelled to leave. There are also people who left the country who are economic refugees because of the economic repression. They had to leave the country. But I think towards the June 12 election and after the election, the repression became more intense and people had to leave the country passing through Cotonou. At that time we had a house, which was kept, in Ghana, in a place called Labadi. So if you are coming in from Nigeria, that place was managed by people like Dapolo Yomi, Chido Onuma. They were there. So when you are coming in, leaving the country, through the bush path, that's the first place you go. They dress you up and then you prepare to go to know the next place they are going to go into. So I think there were about at least 3 major routes that people need to pass through if you wanted to escape. We have the major semi-border. So if you pass through that place, it was a great risk. Either they collect a lot of money from you, or if they discover that you are, a member of the pro-democracy movement, you'll be arrested and then bundled back to the country. So we cannot forget the role played by a lot of the ordinary masses. People are, using people like Shoyinka, for instance, use Okada to cross over to the next country. A lot of people, had to escape through means that were provided by our progressive elements who had escaped to Ghana and were still in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. I was in Ghana, I was in also Ivory Coast. And we used to travel at that time without passport. or you travel with a fake passport, which was legitimate. But that was the only way you can escape, through the border. I remember we went for a conference in Ghana, and we didn't want to pass through the border. Myself, Bamidele Aturu, Chima Ubani, and Chima Ubani had to disguise like somebody selling oranges, so as to pass through from Nigerian border to Benin Republic. So, and if you pass through the border, there's no way they will not identify you. At that time, Chima Ubani was General Secretary of Campaign for Democracy, which was the major organization at that time. I was supposed to have a conference in Ghana to be coordinated by people from the ANC, teach you about tactics of public mobilization. So there was no way we could have passed through the airport, so we had to use the Nadeko route. And I think it was successful because we were able to at least create a lot of decoy to pass through that route successfully without being caught.
During this period, were you ever arrested, sir?
Yeah, because there is no way you can be perfect. My arrest happened, it was by accident. There was a certain journalist, it's now Dr. Aborisha Adebomu. He wrote a piece, How to Actualize June 12th. And then he was passing through a chaotic Oshodi, very chaotic at that time. And then he had this piece of paper on him, with the title, How to Actualize June 12th. So it was going to Vanguard newspaper to publish the article. Then suddenly, somebody just stopped him. In the crowd of over 1 million people, Oshodi was so thick at that moment. And he said, look, let me see what you have inside your bag. He collected the bag and handwritten about 21 pages. This guy read it from beginning to the end. When he stopped Bumi Aborishade, he had a pistol on his hand. He said, look, I represent the Director of Military Intelligence. Can I see what you have in your bag? He collected it and read it to the end. And the last sentence said, Nigerians must harness the potential in their midst to liberate themselves. So immediately he saw it, said, okay, so you are one of those people causing trouble in this country. Follow me. 2 weeks earlier, there was a bomb explosion at Ikeja Cantonment. So we didn't know they had stationed a lot of state agents, in Oshodi. But some of these bombs were thrown. In fact, they were actually perpetrated by Abacha himself in order to blackmail the progressive forces. So they took Bumi Aborishade away and then kept him for 20 days by the SSS. After 20 days, he was moved to Director of Military Intelligence. So after he was released, the campaign was going on, journalists for democratic rights were all involved, organizing rallies for his release. But while they were questioning him, they never knew he was a publisher of June 12 magazine. I didn't say it. So in their own, wisdom, the limit of their own intelligence, they didn't know that he was the publisher of June 12, whereas they were looking for the publisher of June 12. So when he was released from detention, he came to the Guardian newspaper to meet me and said, look, I'm free. That time there was no phone call and all that, like no cell phone. I said, look, I have a good story. So let me interview you and then we'll write about what happened. Myself and Aborisha, they actually attended the same secondary school. So we had known each other for a very long time. So I wrote a piece. In that interview, he revealed to us people that were kept in detention. They tied them heads down and then they put fire under them. People like Moshood Fayemiwo. People like one Major Onyia. The offense of Major Onyia was that he attended the birthday party of the American military attaché. Then the NDC of DA had been arrested. Nobody knew. So he met and a lot of Lebanese that were accused of supporting progressive democracy movements. So when he gave me all these stories, I said, this is a very good story. So I went and wrote the story. It came out on a Sunday. Then Major Mustafa called the director of military intelligence, Colonel Omenka, on Sunday. So look, Omenka said he was in the church when he got that phone call from Mustafa. That this person that you have released, did you know is the publisher of June 12 magazine? Because I put it there that it's also the publisher. I thought they knew, so I just put it in my story. So when they read, they said, okay, we must go and look for Wale Adeoye. So they sent in some 5 soldiers who came to the Guardian. They came on a Monday, so I was not around. I was supposed to have a editorial board the second day. So, but some people came to tell me, the security men at the Guardian, to hint me that, look, soldiers are looking for you, you better escape. I look at it, what have I done? This is just a small story. So, and I didn't want my editors to be arrested in my place. So on the second day, I went to the newsroom. As I was entering, the then editor, Fred Owawa, it was Kingsley. Kingsley was in France. Kingsley Osadolo, he was in France. So Fred Owawa was the one deputizing. So myself, Fred Owawa, Femi Kusa, and Ladibo Nola. That was how we went to, DMI. When I got there, I was detained, and then they left. So they were asking me, in fact, I was left for almost 5 hours. Omeka would just come and smoke. People would, almost about 10 people, the whole place was smoky. They didn't ask me any question. You greet them, they don't answer. So I knew they were waging psychological warfare against me. So they didn't begin my interrogation until around 1 a.m. And they kept asking you 10 questions at the same time. Before you answer this one, they bombard you with them. That was the day Delegiwa, Kudirat was killed. So I could overhear them, passing on military information about the movement of people taking Kudirat to one hospital or the other. I could overhear them talking about, how Kudirat had been shot and all that. I was, right there with Colonel Omeka. And then they brought in Major Onyia and said, look, I should deny that he was ever arrested. And right there, denied that I should go and write with the joint. I said, I'm not going to, I was, in my mind, I said I was not going to write it. So around, when I was released, around 2 a.m., they said they were going to follow me to my home. They asked of my address. I gave them a NUJ address at Adeola Street, at Shomolu. Because if they had followed me home, my problem would have been compounded. In my house were about 7 people being wanted by soldiers. Shima Obani, Oronto Douglas, Chris, all of them packed in my house. I was a bachelor then. So if they had followed me home, the pamphlets that I wanted to distribute, the campaign material, everything was stocked in my private home. So they said they should follow me home. So one captain do was to lead that delegation. So as soon as we stepped outside, Colonel Omeka had left. That was around 2 a.m. So then Colonel Omeka came back again and said, look, leave this guy. He's innocent. Did he say, he said it's not a Nadeco person. Leave him. It's not part of the Nadeco. It's just a journalist. Let's leave him. There's no need to go to his house. I felt so relieved. So by the time I was left off the hook, when I got home, Bumi Aborishade, that had been released, he was right in my house. I told him, say, look, how many years do you have? Take off. They are looking for you. They asked me really, do I know you? I said, I don't know you. I had to deny to save him. If I told them we attended the same secondary school and all that, it would have been a very terrible thing. I would have been compelled to go and look for him. So from there, Aborishade was assisted by one of the foreign missions. He traveled to Ghana. He went to that same house we were talking about. From Ghana, he was taken to US, where he had his PhD. He's an associate professor now. But the irony is that the dream of Aborishade has always been to have a PhD in life. So you could see sometimes how things work out in life that you never planned for. So he has a PhD. And I was a lecturer at Afebalo University, but he has returned to the US. He had all his education in the US. And right now, he's in the US. So I had that very bitter experience. So I was compelled to be coming every day to DMI, but they never ventured to come to my house. Though I had to, when I came back, I had to dislodge, the house. Even when I was taking some of the pamphlets to go and throw away, at a dustbin somewhere, the police stopped me on the way. Hey, what did you have on your head? I said, they are just waste. Because we had been trained that when you keep those materials, put dirty things on top. So I had a lot of rotten things, cow dung put on top of it. So immediately they smell it. They just say, oh, go. But under, there was a lot of pamphlets described as subversive documents by them. So if they had opened those things and saw those things with me, it was 5 a.m. The patrolling vehicle, they just thought, hey, where are you going? Look at it, then they smile, they say, okay, go. I said, the thing are waste too. They say, okay, go away. If they had taken their time to look underground, it would have been a very major problem for me. Wow. So I think, it was a very traumatic experience, but I was one of those people that said I was not going to go into exile because we needed people here to be the foot soldiers who will be campaigning for. And you may want to know, as a journalist, why was I interested? If you don't have democracy, there's no way journalism can thrive. So I felt journalists should not just be observers. We should be participants in the campaign to chase away, military, because it was also in our own interest.
Thank you very much, sir. Fast forward to June 6, 2018, President Muhammadu Buhari shocked a lot of Nigerians by declaring June 12 as a new Democracy Day, which was formerly May 29. What thoughts came to your mind when this statement was issued by President Muhammadu Buhari?
Yeah, the former President Jonathan and Buhari, they share. If you find them sharing a program together, then there should be suspicion. Remember that Jonathan actually wanted to name University of Lagos after Abiola. So then suddenly Buhari came to and said, June 12th holiday. So it's like people have been looking for a way to feast on June 12th to score cheap political points. I don't think there can be genuine reconciliation until we find out and punish those that are responsible for the death of Abiola, those that were responsible for the death of his wife, Kudirat Abiola, those that were responsible for the death of Tunde Oladepo, who was shot, a journalist of The Guardian, who was shot in Abeokuta, those that were responsible for missing journalists like Chinedu Ofuaru of The Guardian newspaper, who disappeared and up till now nobody could trace him. So you cannot be talking about peace when there's no justice. So I think people are just trying to score political points. People want to win over the Southwest. So I don't think this idea of June 12th holiday is born out of genuine interest for the masses. Because if they're actually interested in the people, it's not about Abiola, it's about restitution, it's about justice, it's about liberty. But we have a lot of cases of injustice that are yet to be redressed by successive regimes since 1999.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Finally, do you think Nigeria would have been a better country if the June 12 elections was not annulled?
I had no illusion that June 12 will have resolved the Nigerian contradictions, because we have to be very honest with ourselves. We knew Abiola. If at any time there were riots in Lagos by NANS, they used to attack ITT owned by Abiola. He was generally perceived as a friend of the military, as an imperialist, So that was the kind of garbage he had on his back until June 12 came in. But I think June 12 redeemed him because he stood with the people until his last days. If June 12 had been revalidated, we would have moved slowly forward, but definitely it would not have been a movement backward. I don't think the Nigerian contradictions will have been resolved, because the ruling class will be the beneficiary of June 12, the main beneficiaries, but we will have had democracy since 1993. So no how we will have made a lot of progress than the progress that we have made now. Let me also add that the conflict that we have all over this country now, Boko Haram, cultism, Islamic province of West Africa, they are all products of the manipulation of the military, during the era of 27 years of military rule. Because people's psyche had been brutalized, and people think the only way they can express themselves is through violence. And unfortunately, the present democratic system has not been able to actually deal with the mindset through provision of the essentials of life that can make people to have confidence in the political process. So we'll continue to engage the process as journalists, at least to ensure that we can try as much as possible to minimize conflict, peace, and peace building and conflict resolution, so that will be the basis for us to be able to have a better and prosperous country.